Hello, hello. So, at Respark, Yo Spark Fitness Motivation, one of our main goals is finding ourselves. And in order to find ourselves, we must become authentic with all of the distortions that we can conceive, as well as all of the dissonances that are generated from our own distortions. So, what is one goal I've been focused on? I've been focused on becoming more of myself, my authentic self. So, in other words, I've been in a battle of deleting old notions of my own cognition because that has created metacognitions of other distortions. And sometimes those metacognitive distortions can perpetuate itself as a form of my ideal. So, because we are all trying to grow into what we call the ideal self, that is a distortion in and of itself relative to our own dissonance. In other words, how we think about ourselves changes how we feel about ourselves. Not only that, how others have made us feel about ourselves makes us think about ourselves. So because we're in this inner exchange, this loop, this radio space, again, is looping, we have to understand the best strategy is to identify where you're located within that space or that circle. So, if I had to coach someone through their own cognitive distortions, our 5 step process would be simple. It's really a 6 step process, but the 5 steps are reoccurring and overlapping. So, step one is identification. That is what we're going to need to do in every one of these steps. So, our primary objective is to identify. Now, what 5 things are we going to identify? Well, we have to identify the parameter, the area, the place value, the volume, and the change. Now, these are certain aspects that are relative to math. But that's the whole point. Because in our mind, we can generate a space, math helps us with formulas identify that space relative to others. And so, our first step is to put a boundary on that space that we're talking about in our mind. It is to put a boundary on what we feel is distorted. And then we can take that boundary. Now we can look at the area from which that boundary is in. So, looking at the outside, what is this distortion surrounding? Versus looking at the inside, which is the distortion and all of its impact. Now, the next thing we can do is to set ourselves up with a value. Now, since we have this boundary, now we have the internal aspect, we can look at that place and put a value upon it. Do I agree with this distortion or not? Am I really the number one wrestler in the whole entire state? Or have I just not wrestled everybody to really know? It is up to us to see how we are creating value for that place. But that is the difference. We have to have that volume. That volume is the amount of value that we're putting within that area that is bound together. We've identified an area, we put boundaries on that area, we have a value attached to it, but now we got to see how frequently we are putting that same value on that place, which is the idea of a cup. I can have a glass and I can fill that glass up with some kind of liquid, and that becomes our value. So if we take in our attention and we put it into a place, and that area is impacting so many parts of our lives because it does not have a boundary, now we know step five. We can change that aspect by putting a boundary on there. We understand this in actions and how we interact with ourselves and with our daily lives. But to put words on these steps, to put words on these actions and these sequences is the strategy that I'm providing to all of my clients. It's helping them truly understand themselves while using what they already possess. So the only thing they need to do is recall at this point. So in my journey of becoming more of myself, I'm looking at also helping others become more of themselves too by using the tools and skills that they learned in grade school. So thank you for listening. I'm Mr. Renew.